It was because of somebody's training that kept me alive. And it wasn't just the skills that I needed on the street to survive, but it was somebody's training that kept me alive between the ears. The fact is as strong as many of us are, as tough as many of us are, that we're still a freaking human being. And there's certain things that we deal with that human beings aren't meant to carry alone. Find somebody you can call on. Like we talk about love and we don't want to do anything until, God forbid, somebody ends their life. What happens if we can do something before that? There's nothing I can do about the ones we've lost, but there's something we can do today for the future.
111, 110.
You training to be a street cop?
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm the founder and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Benigno, and I have with us today a gentleman that a lot of you are familiar with. He wrote a book, over 300,000, let's just make it sound crazy, over 300 million copies sold. Behind the badge. He spoke at our 2021 conference. He's been a podcast guest on several occasions. He's a great guy doing great work for the world, and I'm happy back on the podcast. We're actually going to try to do more episodes with Adam Davis because he brings so much value to so many people in the law enforcement community. But with that being said, Adam, I think it's appropriate that you let people know about your background, your history, and how we became friends and all this other jazz we got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on for a third time. It's always cool to get invited somewhere once, but when they bring you back, that's really special. So
It's like the Johnny Carson, right?
yeah, exactly. My background is very briefly night shift patrol, day shift patrol, traffic homicide, criminal investigations, hostage negotiator, intelligence analyst, intelligence liaison, and I left in 2015. I've written 9 books since, nearly 200,000 sales. Behind the Badge is a daily devotion for law enforcement. Many of you have seen it. Some of you probably have not. And it's sold about 80,000 copies, so it's doing pretty good. It's been out since May 1st, 2018. I have a message that is not often the sexiest message, but it's one that we need. Even if you're squared away right now, it's just like preventative medicine to prepare yourself if you ever face the challenges. And I am grateful for every opportunity I get to invest into the men and women who serve day in and day out, protect our communities. I've been gone almost 9 years, October 1st to be 9 years, but I still consider you my brothers, my sisters. And I still think that means something, whatever meaning we give it. And don't treat it just like, anything else. But my background is one that's, I felt like when I started that I had everything squared away, like I had all the boxes checked, and I was running and gunning and doing all the fun stuff. And I started drinking. I don't mean like socially drinking. It was pretty bad. And that kind of spiraled out. And there's some background there to better understand that. And ultimately led me to a day where I tried to end my life. And I have a message, I have a brand, and it's Live Unconquered. And the message is essentially no matter what you face, you have to have a specific mindset that's a little different from everybody else. And Dennis and I have talked offline, like people are readily available to book you or book me or anybody that's in this kind of line of work that's speaking on this matter. They're ready to book people on subject matter like tactics or investigations or interrogation. But when it comes to mental health, when it comes to the work I do specifically, it's just not sexy. Let's just call it what it is. You don't see billboards where beer brands and large other nationally easily recognizable brands are supporting missions like this. And if we want to see change in this area, it requires people from the top to lead the way. It has to be something that we're not creating further stigma around, creating further ostracizing men and women when they need the help, because it's real. Just because you're not dealing with it right now doesn't mean you won't deal with it. I hope you don't, but just because you're not dealing with it right now doesn't mean you won't deal with it ever. And so I talk about the foundations of how I overcame. And so that's a little bit of a background. I hope that helps.
You said we need people from the top to lead the way. and I'm going to just talk on this for a second. I seriously, at some point in my career, misunderstood in some way how to make the change happen. And so we often find ourselves begging the top, quote unquote, to help make the change.
Yeah.
And what I've recognized are two things. And this is completely off the top of my head at the moment. Number one, sometimes the people at the top don't know how to make the change. And so we have to acknowledge that and have that conversation with a lot of compassion, a lot of understanding. And in order to seek that change, we have to kind of figure out psychologically where everybody is, what their weak points are, what their strengths are, and begin to work together. There are so many variables when we talk about going to others to help make change that it makes the mission significantly more difficult. And so why I bring that up is maybe sometimes people want to help make the change, they just don't know how. So my mission now is to help everybody understand how to make things better. Number two, I'm going to make better things to make things better. I am no longer going to get on my hands and knees and beg for change. We're just going to be the change.
There you go.
All it comes down to is the fact that we cannot wait for somebody to do something. And I would argue that we've done something and we will continue to do something. As a matter of fact, every time I come up with a new solution, I realize there's a better solution as well. So a lot of big stuff coming up in the future. Very excited. We're revealing what that's going to be. And this will be my greatest mission yet, but it won't be my last mission either. And so that thing will be the thing that actually creates change and circumvents any kind of approval needed from administration or anything like that, so we can get what we need to get this thing moving forward. But let me ask you, you can comment on that. Go ahead.
No, you're 100% right. I think too often we sit by and we're waiting on the next person to do something when it's our passion that should lead the way. And it's really simple. Like we make it more complex and more difficult than it really is. It starts with developing your own teams, developing these core groups, and developing a communication and chain. And like there's departments across the country that are spending millions of dollars developing wellness bureaus. I've been to several throughout the country. One in particular up in Ohio, they are doing a phenomenal job. They have their own location, a physical location. It's very private. It's off the map. It's off the grid. And they have a place where you can go and you're not surrounded by people. You're not embarrassed, and just leading the way. Like there's money available to make these programs happen, to make this training happen. You know, here's the reality. It was because of somebody's training. It was my faith and what I learned, but it was somebody's training that kept me alive. And it wasn't just the skills that I needed on the street to survive, but it was somebody's training that kept me alive between the ears. And, you know, it's something that you have to be willing to say, hey, be proactive. We talk about being proactive all the time, being proactive on the street, being proactive of dealing with the issues that we have in our community. Why can't we be proactive about this? Just because it may not be an issue in your department doesn't mean it won't be an issue with you at some point or somebody you care about. And if we're going to call ourselves brothers, if we're going to call ourselves sisters, then we ought to be doing things that are proactive and bringing solutions before there's an issue. That's what it means to lead. It's providing solutions before there's a problem in your life. That's what it means. And so take the charge, take the lead, figure that out. If you don't have any idea what that looks like, call me, email me. I will more than happy guide you. And point you in the right direction. This is something you can do for your community. If you don't have anything in your agency, it can start today.
You know, I think that we get into this mindset that we can figure everything out ourselves and have solutions for everything. And the reality is it just doesn't work that way. And so, you know, essentially to even advocate the point of why I pivot into the next thing that's going to be the big thing is because I tried to recognize how many resources we actually need to try to get things better and more correct. And every day, even you showing up to this podcast and giving some advice like this pushes the needle further towards becoming better. Some guy wrote to me on Instagram the other day and said, I actually posted it in a story. He talked about how his administration drives brand new, fricked out fucking cars from their house to the office at home while patrol is driving jalopies around. And he thought that that was such a crappy thing to do. And I said, it is. And he said, well, if I was an administrator, I wouldn't do that. I go, well, clearly our work must be working because I don't know where that came from, but that is the hopeful future of us giving guidance to what selfless leadership looks like. There's a lot of things to try to peel back the layers and fix. And some of those fixes are just within most people's selves. And it is up to us to not sit around and wait for somebody else to do something. And when you have the ability to change things and progress and promote and provide actual substantial context and how to do things, how dare you not share that with everybody else? I mean that from the warmest place in my heart.
100%. It's one thing if we have to, from a position of leadership, correct somebody for actions they took on duty that were not safe or not appropriate or whatever. That's one thing. But if someone is struggling, freaking show compassion. Like, show compassion, be willing to help. Don't be the supervisor that says, do us all a favor and go blow your brains out. Be the guy who leads the way and finds a way to reach out. A lot of times somebody gets in trouble, they make a bad decision, they have bad judgment, they screw up, and immediately they're fired, they're run off, there's no assistance whatsoever. And most of the time, not justifying bad behavior, but I won't even say most of the time, but there's many times when that is tied to a situation that could have been mitigated had there been some protocol in place to deal with what certain things can do to you. And the fact is as strong as many of us are, as tough as many of us are, we're still a freaking human being. And there's certain things that we deal with that human beings aren't meant to carry alone. And if you want to see something change, it starts with the top, leading the way. It starts with somebody who gives a crap about men and women who are actually out, boots on the ground, doing the work. It starts with them leading the way. And there's many that are doing this. I'm not talking down about anybody, but there's many that are doing a phenomenal job. And some don't because they don't know how. They don't know what to do. And so when we talk about leadership, confidence in leadership comes from competency, and there's competency in the skill set and profession and the craft, what is required in law enforcement. But a lot of times where we are excelling in that, we are lacking compassion for each other. And so we see destruction from within. And so you have situations where you have departments losing 30% of their law enforcement officers, or their sworn officers. And that's not always because of morale. Sometimes it's issues that's going on in society. Sometimes it's other issues, administration. But this is one thing that we can deal with. This is one thing we can fix. This is one thing we can address. And it's the most important thing. Mental health is huge. It's huge. There's chaplains in your agency that you could reach out to. There's all kinds of programs that are super effective. And take the lead. Like, take the lead. If you are a supervisor, if you're sergeant, if you're not, like, take the lead. Go sit down with somebody and say, let's make this happen. And if you need instruction, if you need guidance, it starts with freaking compassion for each other. That's where it starts. Is like, we talk about love, and we don't want to do anything until, God forbid, somebody ends their life or we find them struggling. What happens if we could do something before that? There's nothing I can do about the ones we've lost, but there's something we can do today for the future that can have an impact. And that's what I've been doing for nearly a decade now, around the clock. It is not sexy. It is not flashy. It is not marquee material, but it is changing lives. Right now, there are men and there are women who are going home to their families who otherwise would not be. And that is the most important work we could ever do, is to pour into another human being. The work we do on the street is needed. It's noble. It's worthy. It's worth it. And we need it. And I thank God for it. But if we don't have the men and women to do it, then we lose the profession as a whole. We lose that walk of life. So that's my passion. That's what it's about. And it goes to such a deep level.
And I think one of the things that we know we can certainly teach people, and we know for a fact, is compassion. The best part about being a human being, and the good news for everybody, is all this stuff can be learned if you are willing to learn. That's all it comes down to. So, I think that's really a strong point where the new leadership guys like you and I are showing up. And, I want to remind people, leaders aren't defined by rank, just so we're clear. They're just not. So don't think that you have to be a leader in order to lead. Let me go back a little bit, because I'm super curious. I'm always interested to hear about people who have this, I want to say, affiliation, or I'm trying to think of the right word, but when you are turning to alcohol in your hardest times, what is it about alcohol that you love so much, that your body loves so much? Like, what is the feeling that you get? And I had one guy here who did a podcast with me a while back, and he said the first time he tasted alcohol, it was like a rush of euphoria over his body, and he knew he was in love at his first sip when he was 14 and had his first beer. He fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Tell me what your relationship with alcohol is.
So now it's one like I've got a bottle of bourbon that has got like that much that's been drank out of it since last May. And here's when I know I don't drink, is when I feel like I need it. And so when I started, it was more just social. Like we're having different gatherings, we're having different parties, whatever, and that's when I would do it. And then it became, man, I've had a heck of a day. I need something that's going to give me take off the edge. But here's what I've learned, and I don't know if and I'm sure there's science behind this, but here's what I've learned. If I felt like I was stressed, or if I felt like I was anxious, and I would go and I'd drink, that may take the edge off for a little bit, but when it comes back, when it wears off and that stuff comes back, it comes back with a vengeance. And so the anxiety and the stress or whatever, it all comes back stronger, because it's like a Band-Aid over a cancer. It's just causing it to get more infected. It's growing deeper. The roots is growing stronger, it's growing more toxic. And so we get into a cycle where, man, this feels good. I'm going to go and have a sip. This is for me anyway. I don't know if it's for anybody else. It felt good. It gave me a reprieve of maybe a couple of hours. And then when it wore off, hell came back with a fury. And then so every day it got to a cycle where here we get up, there's stress. Here's a moment where I can experience some kind of reprieve. And I would just continue the cycle and keep going because I'm stubborn and I learned things the hard way. And I did that until the point to where it was like I was separated from my wife and my kids, living in a portable office building, like a 6x6 or 12x12 or 10x12 or something like that, and just drinking all I wanted. And that, it's a cycle that's just going to take you deeper and deeper and deeper. And here's what I tell you. My advice is, if you feel like you need it, don't drink it. That's the moment you can say, I'm going to make a different decision. Now, if you say, well, instead of drinking, I'm going to do this, and whatever this is, if it's as bad or worse, don't replace that bad with something even worse or something equally as bad. Find something healthy that you can do, because I promise you, I can guarantee you beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a consequence that will come at some point. There's a consequence. You have to pay the man at some point. And if you run from it now, you can run for a while, but you're eventually going to fall. And when you fall, it's going to hurt. And so right now, hey, I just do it like I want to. I do what I want. It's cool. I don't have any problems with it. And I'm not talking about this from a religious perspective whatsoever, because I wrote a bunch of books that are based on my faith. This is strictly from a discipline perspective, that what is good for your body, what is good for your soul, and what is good for your mind. And it's not good for any of it. There's no benefit whatsoever, especially if you're trying to get your body squared away to where you can actually function at a high optimum performance level. And so I needed it. I got it. And now I know I went for a long time. I didn't have anything. Now I may have a glass of wine on occasion. I don't have to have three glasses of wine. I can have one. I can break away from it because it's a thing here where I know, oh, if I feel like I need it, I don't want it. And so it's detaching from what I feel like I need and going to what I know that I really need. And and so that's what it was for me. So now the relationship to it is I don't need it. I don't have to have it because I know that if I feel like I need that for peace, then I need to go to a place of stillness and here. I need to find a place of stillness and here. And that may sound woo woo like redneck wizardry or redneck hippie. But when you get to a place where you can find stillness and here, no matter what's going on around you, you have a strength nobody can take away from you. And getting to that place is really, really special and it's really important. And so having that peace, like I felt in the patrol car after that situation that day, has changed everything for me. And anybody can find that. Anybody can find it. And you don't have to find it in the bottom of a bottle because that's not where it's found. And and so my suggestion is if you feel like you need it, avoid it.
I was going through some difficult times in my life, and I started really acknowledging that I was going through some real hard stuff. I was explaining to my therapist about like anxiety. She said, I know that you're not a big drinker, but I'm going to forewarn you, even socially drinking at this moment in your life, the repercussions of that social drinking as you come out of that, whatever alcohol feeling that you're feeling, your anxiety is going to be at 30 times worse the next day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So be very really about what kind of alcohol or how much alcohol you're consuming, even if it's social. And so I'm not a big drinker. I'm just more of a social drinker, if anything. But I really don't, it's not my forte. And actually, to be honest with you, I'm sure you can attest to this. 32 is not a friendly age when it comes to alcohol.
No.
You could be hungover at 8 a.m. at 21 and be done with it by 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
32, going on 43, because what are we, 5 days apart in age, you and I?
Yeah. Yeah. 42.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like dude, like it takes days. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that even if I have something that I look forward to socially, I'm like, man, like what are the consequences I'm going to pay for this 4 to 5 hours of fun? And they're significant when you're somebody who's trying to keep up your mental health, your physical health, progress forward in the company that you're running, have to be there for a lot of people. So there's a real consequence when we talk about grabbing some alcohol. And then on top of that, the consequences of actions when you have some kind of foreign substance.
Oh yeah.
In your behavior.
Oh yeah. I tell you, man. Before I left the department, they had sent us to, they required us to start having a physical once a year and doing a PT test once a year. And so I went to the doctor, they did lab work, did the physical. And at 31 years old, testosterone was in the 190s. And I don't know if you're familiar, I know you are, we've talked about this offline, but those of you that are watching or listening to this, if you're not familiar, the typical range is 300 at the low end and 800 at what they call the high end. And for me to be 31 with it to be in the 190s and thyroid that wasn't functioning, and then he gave me this test to take, and he said, you got this post-traumatic whatever, and then this clinical depression. So he gave me Zoloft, which affects frontal lobe or executive action and of your brain, and then gave me thyroid medicine, and then put me on testosterone replacement therapy without trying to understand why in the world is a dude at 31 years old have such low testosterone. And so what I've learned over a decade or more of studying this is that the correlation between elevated cortisol levels, hypervigilance, high stress for a long period of time kills your testosterone. And so if you're thinking, man, I have no energy, I'm always in a pissy mood, I have no drive, I don't want to get out of bed, like you're already dealing with the challenges that you're going to face behind the 8 ball because you don't have any fuel in the tank. You have nothing in the tank. You go to the gym, you try to eat right most of the time, you're like seeing no changes. And so now you're adding foreign substances to your body, whether it's alcohol or whatever it is, and you're putting yourself at a strong disadvantage to see any type of victory, any type of success in your life. And so, side note, go have some freaking lab work done, see what your hormones look like, and address that stuff. Have them, if you're a man, have them check your PSA level, check the estrogen, check the testosterone, check the red blood count, check all this stuff, and do it a couple of times a year so you can stay ahead of the curve, because everything has to be in balance. Like we talk about balance in terms of inside. Like we want to see all these changes on the outside. It has to happen on the inside first. This is not about balance in our pursuit of excellence. You go all in, but when we're talking about balance on the inside, there has to be balance there, or you're going to be jacked up and there's going to be no success or progress.
It's interesting. I think people may come to a crossroad in their life where they start to recognize that they want a change. They're looking at their life and saying, this is not who I want to be or how I want to do it. And I told somebody this right before we got on the podcast, somebody who's going through something very difficult in their life. And I said, everybody wants to help when you experience something that's significant. Some people who you thought were your friends will run for the hills because it takes courage to be next to somebody when things are tough. And, it just does. But it's respected. And people think they have solutions for you, but the only solutions that are out there are ones that you possess. And so while your friends and family may know what's best for you, all you can do is keep your ears open, but you're going to have to help yourself. And so this person was going through a difficult time. And I said, look, your first step, I'm going to follow up with you. This girl doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. She got through something very, very traumatic. And I caught on to it in our Facebook group. And so I reached out to her and I said, I'm following up with you today at the end of the day because I need you to just take this first step. Once you get this first step done, then I can leave you alone because I don't have the time to be your personal coach, but I have enough time to get you to where you need to be because I care about you as a human being and I know what you're experiencing. The rest is on you. Sometimes we just need people to give us a little perspective, but people who understand how to give the advice in a certain situation. So if you said to me like, hey, what's the next big stock tip that you think I should invest my money in? I would say to you, you're asking the wrong guy. But if I think I can help you, which I know I can in situations like this, and basically what I did was after the conversation, after telling my story to her, was give her a link to Psychology Today and said, you must get in touch with somebody right away and get that rolling. Just schedule the appointment. I suggest to really do a little looking around. I know it's hard. You're dealing with a lot right now, but dig deep, get the energy, get that in, get your ass in the shower and get up and get to that appointment and sit there for day one.
Yep.
And from that point forward, you're going to be okay. That's it. That's what you need in that situation. And I know that because that's what I needed in this situation. And you have to, if you're experiencing something very difficult, your friends and family have good intention. Believe me, they just don't have the right advice.
Yeah. Well, I have a private group of men that are all first responders in a group off of social media. And I did a poll recently. It said, and I did this little explanation and I asked, how many of you have somebody that you can call on in any given circumstance? And I said 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 or more. And out of 20 men that responded to the survey, more than nearly 25% said they had 0 people to call on. And so those men are now my brothers. I'm calling on them. I'm talking to them. I'm checking on them. And if you're out there and you're going through something and I know how this feels, I know exactly how it feels. That's where I was. I've been there where you feel like I have nobody that I can call on and talk to. Everybody needs somebody that you can call on. Like everybody doesn't need to know your business, but somebody needs to know what you're going through. And so having somebody that you can call on and talk to, no matter what level you're in life, you need somebody that you can call on, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a therapist, whatever. You need somebody that you can talk to about whatever you're dealing with at the rawest form, the most authentic form. And, I have coached hundreds of men and women from mostly law enforcement and then other parts and other walks of life, through horrible situations. They didn't know anybody else to call on, and they get stuck with me. So they reach out, whether it's addiction to pills, whether it's addiction to alcohol, whatever it is. And I just walk them through it, and I plug them into resources. You don't have to go through what you're going through alone. Don't ever do it alone. Don't ever go through your stuff alone. It's going to destroy your marriage if you're married. It's going to destroy your relationships. It's going to destroy your family, and it's going to destroy your life. You're not meant to carry it alone. Find somebody you can call on. And then, like you said, I've got this little routine checklist I give people to go through. The first thing is check the freaking box. I woke up today. Practice gratitude. Practice gratitude for the simple things in life. And when you start to feel anxious, about stuff, take time to shift your focus from what you're anxious about and practice gratitude in that moment. There's something that happens when you shift your brain from that focus on what you're anxious about to what you can be grateful for. It'll change everything for you if you make that a very practical practice through your life every day.
When we talk about having somebody to lean on, somebody to call who'll be in your corner,
Yep.
the question I think people would ask themselves is, do you know somebody that will show up in your life with zero judgment?
100%.
That is the person that we trust, the person who, no matter what you did or what you got yourself into, will come to you as a human being, understanding that maybe mistakes happen. Maybe you made choices that were incorrect. Maybe whatever it may be, maybe the things you're experiencing, how you're reacting to it, are the way that you process it, but look and see you without any judgment.
100%.
And that is something all of us can learn. We can all learn how to exercise non-judgment. And if you want to learn how to do that, what you can do is look up 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You can Google this and read the Subway excerpt. And it has to do with being a paradigm shift of judgment. Recently, I talked to somebody that was only responding back to me like every 3 days. And I said to this person, is there any reason why you essentially, and I mean this with my heart, wait 3 days to respond when we have things that have to get done, and you came to me for this thing? And the person wrote, it's because I'm very depressed. And I said, thank God I didn't approach them with, what the fuck is this, right? Why is this person doing this?
Yeah.
It's that question of, what else is happening? Why are you acting this way? And now that I know that, the whole conversation went from me being, where is this person, to how can I help this person? How can I give them guidance? This can be learned. You probably can't learn it from your friends. You probably can't learn it from your parents. Maybe. You probably can't learn it from your grandparents or anybody else you know. But there are many resources in internet age that you might find yourself attracted to, like these books on becoming a better person. And I got to tell you, I love becoming a better person. It's a no-brainer for me. And I really try to do things without any care or thought about myself to ensure that I'm being the best human being I can be for other people. So I told my friend Ryan, who's my best friend, I said, if you murdered your family, I promise you I'd be the first person visiting you in jail and put $100 in your commissary. Because we're so quick to judge. And I, like, it was an extreme example, but the bottom line is that was me sending him the message that no matter what happens in your life, I am that kind of friend for you. Yeah. I will be the person. We had a girl we used to work with at our office years ago. Really nice girl, became good friends with her. And I don't know, she had like this weird fiance. This should be vague enough so nobody will pick up on it. But I was away. We were actually in Dallas and getting lunch, me and Jay, my original videographer, and I was looking like through the internet, and her face was in the paper, on like the news articles. And so she had been wrapped up in something and involved in something that she really wasn't involved in, but she was guilty by association, quote unquote, charged with something very minimal compared to everybody else who was in this 15-person lineup. And so, people at my staff were like setting this over. Like, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? And, I'm the cop. We work in the same building. And a couple days later, I see her coming down the hallway. I knew that, and I was friends with her. Like, I really liked her. And so she sees me, and I think she was waiting for that moment, knowing that we were friends, of like, how am I going to judge her? And I said to her, the first thing I said was, "Hey, are you okay?"
Mm-hmm.
And she just poured out. And I said, "Look, it just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get through this." She's explaining everything to me. I said, "I come to you as a friend with no judgment. I know that you know that I'm this top guy, quote unquote. I saw that and didn't think for a second any differently than you. I thought, what a series of unfortunate events that you're going to have to experience." And then we sat down and I gave her some advice, what I think she should do. She explained things to me. And I think she was so appreciative that she recognized that at least one person, who I wasn't even her best friend, sat down with her and understood that we all make mistakes. And again, guilty by association. But think about how many people in her life that she thought were her best friends or her family, though we're not there for her when she needed them most. But some weird, and that happened to me, right? When I went through all this bullshit that I went through, the strangest people started showing up and giving me support. And I got to tell you one, I'm going to give him credit right on the air. And that is Sheriff Wayne Ivey from Brevard County. That is Sheriff Mark Lamb. Joe Gamaldi, he's the vice president of the FOP. These dudes literally ran towards me and were ready to go to bat for me. And they didn't have to.
No.
That's just who they
100%.
are.
Yeah.
When everybody ran, who I thought were like my best friends, they stepped forward and they were just ready. And I'm not saying they were the only ones, but it was just to advocate the point that you'd be surprised who actually shows up for you when shit hits the fan.
Well, and for us, this is a huge shift for law enforcement officers to, the people we deal with day in and day out. And we're always suspective of people telling the truth, and we're always analyzing, and we're always looking and searching and pursuing. But when we have somebody in our life that's in need, when we can be sort of empathetic instead of being judgmental, and having that shift from, instead of having a perspective of like, what can I get today? What can I ask for today? How can I serve you today? That's kind of like you don't necessarily have to say that, but that becomes our perspective. That becomes our drive in our personal relationships and those that we serve with and those that we live with. And when you have that perspective of, okay, well, I serve on duty, but how can I serve in the relationships that mean the most to me? It's a game changer. And so when you have that perspective and that's kind of your mindset, then you're more apt to be empathetic when somebody comes to you. Like, even if you go to the grocery store, you pick something up and somebody's being rude or whatever, they're being rude for whatever reason, instead of being like, well, what a jerk, what a prick, whatever, think about like, what are they going through that made them this way? That's how we can see change. Like, if you have somebody shows up to work late consistently, if you start noticing behavior changes, if you start noticing that they're pulling back from communication or whatever, like, start thinking, what is it that maybe they're going through? How can I reach out to them? That's when we should close that gap in their personal relationships and those professional relationships, so that maybe we can see a change. We can start changing the direction of some of the things that are going on in our lives, because you don't know what people are going through, and we don't know what people are going through because we don't have the relationships to be able to know. Because it's check in, check out, we go home, we do our deal, we eat, we whatever, we go to work. It's just like clockwork, autopilot, and we don't have the depth. And so it's about having the depth. But most of us don't live at a deep level. And so when we can get to a place where we live at a deep level of gratitude and empathy, and we seek to connect with each other, then maybe we know a little bit more about what each other's going through without being judgmental, like you said. Instead of saying, man, what a freaking idiot, what a stupid move. Like, try to figure out how you can help them through that. Now, you can't save everybody, can't help everybody, but you can serve one, you can love one. And it starts with the person in the mirror.
It doesn't take a lot of effort to give a half a shit. And I'll tell you this, my kids will watch me everywhere we go picking up garbage. We go to the park. As I'm walking towards the park, if there's like wrappers and stuff, I clean up the garbage at the park. And like, that's not our garbage. I'm like, it doesn't have to be. I go to parties, right? I'm usually the one not drinking at like these parties where like families and kids and stuff like that. I'm cleaning up. I see stuff, I pick it up, I throw it in the garbage. I'm not one of those guys walking around like, and so I guess I'm trying to correlate that back to, essentially it doesn't take much to care just a little bit, and you're going to be so happy with yourself if you just go a little bit extra for people. That's all.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and love is the most powerful force in all existence. And it doesn't look the same for everybody, but how can you have an impact on somebody else today for good? You can choose to have a negative outlook or you can choose to have a positive outlook. I've got my own challenges I'm dealing with. Everybody's got their own stuff they're dealing with. You can choose to let it destroy you, or you can choose to let it be a launching pad for something else, for something greater, and learn from it and help somebody else. But love is the greatest, most powerful force in all existence. What can you do with that force today to change somebody's life in your world? And yeah, our kids are watching us. And when it comes to the pain, when it comes to the negative stuff of life, the trauma, they're watching how we respond to it, and we're teaching them how to deal with it. So if we deal with it in a negative way, they're going to see that and assume that's the behavior they need. And that's how they're supposed to deal with it. So how we can lead the way starts most effectively and most practically in the home, and how we lead those who are watching us. And then it goes to outside the home, and then it goes into the world. And that's the most effective change we can begin to make starting today, starting with the man or the woman in the mirror.
I just thought of this because I've been thinking about this past couple of days, weird as that sounds, but behaviors are contagious.
Yes, they are.
And so you will behave similar to your group that
Yep.
you're with. And I think about some of the times as a police officer, and I look back now and how absurd our behavior was. And, you know, it's not like I did that with intent. Nobody taught me how to behave.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying I did anything that violated constitutional guidelines or anything like that. I'm saying I could have done it differently. And I wish somebody would have told me that you should have done it differently. And that's what I'm telling people now is like, hey, like I should have done it differently, but I didn't know that because nobody gave me the perspective of how I remember my friend Vinny said, you started doing things different here than everybody else. It pissed everybody off, but you were right. You were the right one. You did it right. I said, because I had to go elsewhere to see what right was. And when I saw it, I recognized it and I brought it back. He's like, and then you fucking helped all these other guys and girls who were new coming on do things right. He's like, and you were doing the right thing. He's like, and eventually got respected for it, but they were pissed at first.
Yeah.
I get it, man. I will, you know, like I'm one thing I can say is I'm sure you'll find people who may say ill things towards me is what it is, but I would challenge you to find a coworker of mine that said I was ever a lazy piece of shit. I was ever somebody that wasn't there for people, that I didn't help do more than I actually had to do. I wasn't perfect, but I promise you that I was people's favorite coworkers, like because they knew that no matter what, I would be there for them. Anyway, I got to wrap this up. Where can they find Adam Davis?
Email me, adam@theadamdavis.com, or visit the website, theadamdavis.com, or on social media. Find me there. You can find me anywhere on social media. I'd love to connect with you and hear from you.
We're going to do more of these because I think these are always really good when we do them. So we'll
man,
make this a
thank
very
you.
frequent thing, maybe weekly or bi-weekly with you on
Let's
here.
do it.
Especially because your voice is so soothing. It is just amazing. The fact that you are the same age as me, but you sound so much more smooth than I do. You could have been just like a professional serenader, right? Maybe you can like record your voice and send it to other guys' girlfriends.
Hey, that's a great closing. There's this little practice I've used for over 10 years called tapping, or emotional freedom technique. There's a free app called the Tapping Solution. You can download it and you can access free tapping meditations that I narrated. There's one for sleep. There's people that listen to that before they go to sleep, and that's so weird to me, but whatever. So you can download that for free. You can access the link on my website, theadamdavis.com. It's absolutely free of charge. You go download the app for free, go to the bottom where it says tapping, scroll down to where it says first responders, and you'll see the ones I've done for you there.
Awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much.
Let's do it again.
Yes, sir.